Today you're going to learn more about Bloom's revised taxonomy. If you do a search on the internet and you find Bloom's, you're going to find Bloom's revised taxonomy and Bloom's taxonomy. Here in just a few minutes you'll learn what the difference is, but I want you to look at the pyramid as you see here. And we start out at the bottom with remembering, then understanding, then applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. And these are the 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy. We go from lowest to highest. And the top 3 are the what we refer to as HOTS, the higher order thinking skills. And the bottom 3 are referred to as LOTS, the lower order thinking skills. Hard to say sometimes. I want you to look at this quote real quick. I think it's very interesting, but I want you to think about it as a teacher coming into the classroom. Our mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be ignited. One of the things I always told anybody I ever talked about when my students left my classroom, I want them to be able to think. I want them to be able to think through a process. I want them to be able to think on their own and not be told and take everybody's word as the rules. Bloom's taxonomy is taxonomy of cognitive objectives. It was developed in 1950s by Benjamin Bloom, therefore that's where you get the Bloom's taxonomy. It's a way of expressing qualitatively different kinds of thinking, so the different levels. It has been adapted for classroom use, but it's heavily required in the classroom today. In fact, that is many discussions we still have with teachers today and reviews of Bloom's taxonomy, so this is not going to be the first and only time you ever hear Bloom's. This will be a continual part of your professional development and your discussions in your professional learning communities, in your maybe faculty meetings, in your professional developments that you go through throughout the years. It's a way, Bloom's revised taxonomy is a way to basically categorize and organize the 6 levels of thinking skills. In the 90s, it changed to revised taxonomy. One of Bloom's students, Lauren Anderson, went in and revised, and we're going to talk about some of those changes that you see in the different names. And basically, a lot of the changes were made in just the naming. So on the left, you can see the original terms were knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. And the new terminology is remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. You will notice that on the new terms, creating and evaluating have switched places with the original levels. Evaluation was originally at the very top level, the 6th level. It is now the 5th level in the Bloom's revised taxonomy. There are most of the changes that we're seeing with the revised is basically a change in terminology. So you're going to find that there are the 6 major categories, and we basically changed the title of each category from a noun to a verb form. Taxonomy reflects the forms of thinking, and as you want to make sure you emphasize, thinking is an active process. And so we want to make sure that our descriptions of the levels are verbs and how we utilize those. Some of the categories, again, switched places from the original Bloom's to the revised. Okay? And you can see that knowledge is a product of thinking, and so it was inappropriate to describe it as knowledge. We really want it to be a remembering. So that's why that one was changed. Comprehension became understanding, and synthesis was renamed creating in order to reflect a more descriptive understanding of what that level is. Really, there's a little bit more change in emphasis as well. We wanted our tools for curriculum and our instruction and our assessment to all be what we call authentic. Authentic is just not something that you can open up your textbook or you can open a Blackline Master or hand out a worksheet with. Authentic means you're sitting down, you're doing the planning, you're thinking, what do my students need? And how am I going to get them to that level? What is the best way for them to show me the learning? And Bloom's taxonomy is used in many different areas in careers, but we mainly refer to it in education. And it doesn't matter whether you are a kindergarten teacher, whether you are a middle school math teacher, or whether you are a career and vo-tech teacher at the high school level. Every person who works in education is going to be learning, understanding, emphasizing, and teaching with Bloom's in mind. As you can see from this slide, you've got remembering at the bottom, which is basically recalling information, recognizing it, listing, describing, and so forth. Then you get to understanding. Can I explain an idea or a concept? Can I interpret the information? Can I summarize? Can I paraphrase, classify or explain? Then we get to applying. Can I use the information? Can I transfer the information to another situation? Can I carry out? Can I execute something from what I've learned? Then your fourth level is analyzing. I'm breaking the information into smaller parts so I can explore and understand, build those relationships. I can compare and contrast. I can organize it. I can break it down through deconstruction as we go through that. The fifth level is evaluating it. Can I justify the decision or the course of action? Can I hypothesize? And hypothesizing does not just mean to deal with science and the science process, but I can hypothesize about many things. Maybe it's reading a book. What did that author intend? And what is this character about? Maybe I can question what this character is doing and then read on to see if I'm correct. And the last, or the sixth level, is creating. Can I take the information I've gained, put into new ideas, into different products? Can I actually create something, design, construct? And that's that highest level of Bloom's, is when I can take something and then make it my own, put something new into that process. Okay, we're going to break down each of the levels of Bloom's. We're going to put this into a few different components that we're going to look at. So the format is going to be the same for all of the 6 levels as we go through this. So remembering is able to recall, restate, and remember information. And you can see there it's things like recognizing, listing, describing, naming, locating. So basically the question would be, can you recall information? On this next slide, you can see what you might have the students doing. So you might have them locating information on a map or in a book. You may have them repeating information or working in a group to locate information. Outlining would be considered remembering as you go through this process. And the products might include, you might have them take a quiz, you might have them do a worksheet or a workbook. It says a test here, but that determines by the type of question you're giving. So not all tests would be at that remembering level. It determines the verbiage in each of those questions as to the level of Bloom's to decide which level it would be at. On this slide, you can see we're going to talk about classroom roles. At the remembering level, the teacher's role is really directing, telling, showing, examining, questioning, evaluating. That's what the teacher's doing. It could be through lecture, it could be through mini lessons, it could be a different variety of way, but you can see what the teacher's role is. And then on the right, you see the student role. So the students are responding, they're absorbing. You hope those little brains are working to gather the information that you've just shared with them. They're making memories, they're defining information, they're describing. So you can see the 2 roles to give you an example, what the teachers would be doing at this level of Bloom's and what the students would be doing. Here's some good questions that you might want to make sure and have on hand as you go through this, and we'll provide you with another handout as well in this process. Sentence stems is what we call these, of what the questions might look at remembering. What happened after? How many? What is? Can you name? Who spoke to? Which is true or false? So these are all sentence stems that you might find at the lowest level of Bloom's at the remembering level. And then you're going to see here some potential activities or products. So you might have them write a list of keywords you know. You might have them make a timeline of their day. You might make a chart showing the following information. And so you can see as you go through this, maybe some examples of what the student activities or student products would be. All right, we're going to move to the second level of Bloom's, which is understanding. And at this level, the learner grasps the meaning of information by interpreting and translating what has been learned. So they're absorbing the information, they're taking it in, and they're translating it into their learning. So they're summarizing, they're inferring, they might be classifying or comparing. So basically at the understanding level, can you explain your ideas or your concepts? From this list here, you can see what understanding might be, with some of the things you might be doing. You may have them restate, you might have them annotate, you might have them paraphrase, you might have them review or observe something or estimate or define. Products might include, they may have to recite a poem, they might have to summarize either verbally or oral or verbally or written. You might have them creating a list or a label or something along that line. The teacher's role, the teacher is demonstrating, they're listening, they're questioning, they're comparing, they're contrasting, and they're examining. And the students their role is to explain, describe, translate, and it is active participation. Where at the remembering role, it's more of a passive participant. At an understanding, they're active because they're having to take that information that they gained, transfer it into a different format to explain what they've learned in the process. Your sentence stems for understanding might be, can you explain why? Can you write in your own words? What do you think? Can you clarify for me? So you can see those were things. The sentence stems were all pulled from a book called Learning to Think, Thinking to Learn by Poole. Here are some sample or potential activities and products. You could have them write in your own words. You could cut out or draw pictures to illustrate, make a cartoon strip, explain why the character solved the problem in a particular way, paraphrase this chapter in the book, and so forth. Applying, which is the third level of Bloom's, is the learner makes use of information in a context different from the one in which it was learned. So at this level of Bloom's, they've taken in the information, they've gone through the remembering phase, they've gone through the understanding. Well, now they're going to take the information and apply it maybe in a different situation. Maybe it is we've learned a math concept, say maybe something in fractions. And we've learned it in the same format, but maybe we move it to a different format or a real-world situation, and they're having to take those rules that they learned with fractions and put them into a new situation. It could be the same thing with science or in sports as you go through this. So they're having to implement something, carry it out, using the information. And so the question you ask is, can you use the information in any other familiar situation? So with the applying level, we want the students to take what they've learned and then apply it. You can see here some of the things that you might have students doing. You might have them calculating, you might have them interpreting, you may have them operate a tool or a piece of equipment, computing information. They may be painting something or drawing something, They might even be into drama, so you might have them dramatize something or write a play that they had to apply that information with as you go through it. The roles in the classroom. For a teacher at this level of Blooms, you're going to have them showing things, facilitating it. They're going to be observing and, of course, evaluating, organizing for the students, and providing those questions to keep them going in the right direction. The students could be solving problems, they could demonstrate their knowledge, they could compile information, construct something as they go through it. And here they are an active recipient, so they're going through and being very active in this process. You'll notice as you move up the levels of Blooms to the highest, the students are very active. They're taking more of the learning responsibility. The remembering, at the very lowest two levels, they're really receiving information and processing it, but when you hit those higher levels, they've got to be the ones being active in their learning. Some of the sentence stems you might look for is, do you know of another instance where? Can you group by characters such as, or characteristics? What questions would you ask of the author, or in those types of information? From the information given, can you develop a set of instructions about? So these are just some sample sentence stems. And here's some potential activities or products you might have students doing. They might be writing diary entries. They might be making a scrapbook. They can make a topography map, or I refer to those salt maps. You mix up salt and develop a map. You could have them make models, and so forth. Alright, we are to analyzing, and at analyzing you're seeing us do things where the students are better understanding the information. So the learner's breaking the information down, and they're better understanding that information. So they're comparing, they're organizing, they're deconstructing, they're attributing, outlining, finding, and so forth. And basically what the students are doing is, can you break down information into parts to explore understandings and relationships? So they're taking that to the next level to compare things and to really bring meaning to what they're learning. You can see from the verbs here some things that they might be doing. They may be question, appraise, they may inspect, they may be probing, they may be sifting through information, or calculating, or criticizing. Products that might include, they may be making a graph, checklist, charts, databases, a mobile, they may make an abstract outline, a report, something along those lines. For a teacher, they're going to be asking probing questions. They're going to be serving as a guide. They're going to be doing a lot of observations at this level and evaluating, and with those observations and evaluations comes those questions to keep the student focused in the right direction. And maybe organizing or dissecting the information down so the student can understand it, being that clarifier at times. The students really are, they're uncovering information, they're thinking real deep, they're having to ask those questions to themselves, almost being investigators at times, and being that active participant again. Sentence stems for analyzing could be, which event could not have happened? What do you see as other possible outcomes? Can you distinguish between? What was the turning point? So you can see from these sentence stems how it has progressed to those higher levels, and how we're asking the students to think outside the box a little bit to put some information together through the process. Potential products that they could be doing would be Venn diagrams. They could design their own questionnaire surveys. They could classify actions of the characters in the book. They can make a family tree showing relationships. You could write a biography of a person. You could draw a graph. You could actually start teaching them how to make decision-making matrices, or looking at charts and graphs and creating their own to compare in that process. The evaluating level, the learner makes decisions based on in-depth reflection, criticism, and assessment. So they've been doing a lot of checking. They're hypothesizing, they're experimenting, they're judging, they're testing, they're detecting. So you're asking the students, can you justify a decision or a course of action? That's what the evaluation level is asking of you. You can see here some of the terms that may be used or what you're asking them to do. You're asking them to prioritize, to infer, to select, to defend, to debate, to deduce, to argue, to probe, to rank, reject. Those are some of the things you're asking students to do at this level. And products might be, you might have them do a debate. You may have them sit on a panel. You might have them do a verdict. So, or persuasive speech would be something along this line. Classroom roles for the teacher, it's really just clarifying, accepting, and guides. So you're keeping those students on track to guide them through their learning. The student is really doing all the work. They're judging, they're comparing, they're doing critiques, they're arguing. They're having to make those decisions as they go through this process. And here are some guiding sentence stems. Is there a better solution to? Do you think blank is good or a bad thing? Do you believe blank? How would you feel if? What are the pros and cons? So you can see these are those things we're asking those students to think. That's what the evaluating is really having them do, is to think. And you can see here some potential activities and products. You may have them write a letter to the editor. You may have them prepare a list of criteria to judge. You could form a panel to discuss viewpoints. You could have them evaluate a character's actions in the story. The top level of Bloom's is creating. And the learner creates new ideas and information using what has been previously learned. So this is the highest level of Bloom's. And at this level, you're seeing like designing, they're constructing, they're planning, producing, inventing, devising, or making. So the students, can you generate new products or ideas or ways of viewing things at this level of Bloom's? And you can see some of the verbiage that you may have them doing. You may have them developing, originating, setting up. They may compile. They may forecast. They could be assembling something. They could be formulating. So products they might be doing, they could be doing a film, a story, a project. They may be making a new game, a new song, some type of multimedia product or project, some type of advertisement. Maybe they're into painting, so you allow them to do those types of activities. And at the highest level of Bloom's in creation, a teacher is really being that facilitator of learning. They're trying to extend the kids' thinking. They're helping them reflect through the process, analyze what they did, and evaluate as they go through this. The students are really those designers. They're taking on that true role of being the formulating the ideas, putting the plan into action. And at this level, kids really have to be motivated to be there. So it's really project driven and more of the creation level of Bloom's. Sentence stems might include, can you design a blank to blank? Why don't you devise your own way to? How many ways can you? Can you create a new and unusual use for? Can you develop a proposal which would? So, as you can see, the kids are really having to think at that highest levels. So maybe I give you a 7-Up bottle and I could say, can you create 2 new ways or an unusual way to use this 7-Up bottle? And so you can have the kids being able to think. And potential activities, you may be having them design a record, a book, or magazine cover. You may have them creating some type of promotional selling. They may have become a marketing specialist, have to sell the idea. They might have to write a jingle to advertise, write a show, design a robot, create something new, some type of new product as they go through this. Again, let me remind you, we divide the levels of Bloom's. The lower three are called the lots, which are the lower order thinking skills. So the lowers are those lower level questions, are those in remembering, understanding, and the lower level, the application. And with these, usually questions at the lower levels are appropriate for evaluating student preparation and comprehension, diagnosing student strengths and weaknesses, and reviewing and summarizing content. At the higher levels, which we refer to as HOTS, the higher order thinking skills, those are requiring more complex application, analysis, evaluation, or creation. So questions at the higher levels of taxonomy are usually appropriate for encouraging students to think more deeply and critically, for problem solving, for encouraging discussions, and stimulating students to seek information on their own.